Hey, what's up, Castlers? Ydtd Vs 7 here again to bring you Tournament of Champions action. But before I do, don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. Let's get to the game. This was game 2 of 2 between Ydtd with white and Jayelawrence with black. In the first game, Ydtd with black defeated Jayelawrence via resignation after 43 moves. Let's see if Jayelawrence could get some retribution. Ydtd with white starts out with pawn to d4. You then get pawn to d5. And then pawn to c4, also known as the Queen's Gambit. Ydtd offers up the wing pawn to attack the center and distract J from the e4 square. Checkmate and 427 tried this same opening against Jayelawrence in their first game as well. Unfortunately, Checkmate and 427 timed out in that game, and that has been his only defeat of the tournament so far. But back to the action. c5 from J immediately challenges the d4 pawn and takes space in the center. Pawn to e3 defends the attacked d pawn. J develops his kingside knight. C takes d5. J opts to play c takes d4 instead of recapturing the pawn on d5 with his knight, which was the best move. But anyway, after c takes d4 was played, you get queen takes d4, queen takes d5, equal trade, knight to f3, knight to c6, J hits the queen on d4, Ydtd takes the queen, J recaptures with his knight, pawn to a3, pawn to e6, bishop b5, pinning J's knight to the king, bishop d7, J unpins his knight, Ydtd kingside castles, J develops his dark squared bishop. Rook to d1, pawn to f6, pawn to e4, kicks the knight away to c7, which hits the bishop on b5. Ydtd moves the bishop to safety with bishop a4, rook d8, knight c3, Ydtd develops his queenside knight. J castles kingside, bishop to f4, hitting the unguarded knight on c7. e5 blocks and attacks the threatening bishop. Bishop to e3 takes the bishop out of harm's way. Pawn to b6 is a blunder. But Ydtd fails to take advantage as he plays h3. The best move was rook takes d7. Because then you get rook takes d7, bishop takes e6, rook e3, king f1, rook takes e3, f takes e3. This is a tough move to find, but an amazing move nonetheless. Ydtd would be up a knight and in position to win this game. But back to pawn to a. Knight b8 is played by J. Ydtd then checks the king with his bishop. J blocks the check with his bishop. Ydtd takes. J recaptures with his knight, equal trade. Ydtd then takes a nice outpost with knight to d5. Bishop c5. Bishop takes c5. Knight takes c5, equal trade. But now J is attacking the undefended pawn on e4. Knight c3 defends the pawn. Rook to d3. Rook takes d3. And then knight takes d3, equal trade. But J is now hitting the unguarded pawn on b2. So Ydtd moves the pawn to safety with pawn to b4. Knight c6. Knight d5. Ydtd taking a nice outpost in the middle of the board. Look at how many squares Ydtd's knight is covering, and there is no opposing pawn to kick it away. That's why you always want to get your knights in the middle of the board, castlers. But let's continue. Jayelawrence plays rook d8, and this is a serious mistake. because it allows Ydtd the potential to kick Jay's c6 knight away with his pawn, then trade knights, leaving Jay with a sorry isolated pawn on d4 that will be gobbled up eventually with Ydtd's rook on d1. However, let's see what actually happened. Rook d8. Oh, Ydtd did not spot the move and played pawn to g3, missing a golden opportunity. You then get king f7, king f1, pawn to h6, and king e2. Ydtd going after the knight, knight b2, pawn b5, kicking the knight away to d4 with check. You then get trade of knights, signaling the start of the endgame. Let's see who comes out on top. The four-time LC champ Jayelawrence, or the man with the black hat, two-time champ and number 2 ranked player in Let's Castle, Ydtd. Rook e1, Ydtd harassing the knight. e3 check. This is an opportunity to play the best move, knight to a4, which it was the best move, yeah, eluding the attack from the harassing rook. Instead, you get d3 check. Gentlemen, Ydtd continues with an excellent move, king to d2, attacking the pawn. Now Jay's pawn and knight are threatened. So what are you going to do, Jay? He plays knight c4 check, nice move. Ydtd counters, taking the free pawn with king takes d3. Knight e5 check, king e2, king to e6. Rook c1, Ydtd taking an open file. Pawn to f5, pawn 3, knight to d7, rook c6, Ydtd attacks the king, king to e5 hits the knight. Then Ydtd plays rook c4. The Indian did not like this move. Knight e7 was the best move, which allows for winning material. However, Jay continues with f takes e4. Ydtd captures equal trade. He threatens to win the e4 pawn with the play of knight to c5. Ydtd protects the pawn with king e3, rook d6, pawn g4. Jay takes the pawn on e4 with his knight, thinking even if Ydtd takes back with his rook with check, he can snag the knight on d5 and they will be even in material. However, Ydtd says, nah, I'll take the pawn on b6 with the absolutely brilliant move knight takes b6. Jay then captures the knight with his rook, and then Ydtd bags and gags the knight on e4 with a check on the king. Just an outstanding move by the baddest man in the club, and not an easy move to find. Ydtd now has a pawn advantage on the queen side going into the endgame, but it's not over yet, everyone, because like the great former world chess champion Emmanuel Lasker once said, the hardest game to win is a one game. Let's see if Ydtd can bring this 747 in for a smooth landing. King d5 is played by Jay. You then get a4, pawn a4. Rook to d7. Rook d4 check. King to e5. King to d3. Pawn g6. e4 check. King to d5. Rook e8. Rook h7. Rook d8 check. King e5. King to c4. Ydtd wants to get his king near his pawns to help with the promotion. King f4. Jay going after the unguarded pair of pawns on the G and H files. Rook d6 hits the pawn on g6. Rook g7 defends the pawn. King to b4. King g3. Rook d3 check. Ydtd shines a spotlight on the intruding king, saying, I see you. Now get out. And he obliges with king h4. King to a5. Pawn h5. J inducing a pawn break. Ydtd takes. Pawn g5 from J. Good move. It leaves Ydtd with an isolated pawn that will be gobbled up quickly. King to a6. J gobbles up the hanging pawn. Rook to d4. Rook f7. C4 is a blunder because it allows for rook f4, which is a great move from J because it allows him to swap rooks and have a dangerous passed pawn on the f file. He takes a7 from Ydtd, and now it's going to be a race to see who can promote their pawn the fastest. On the f3 from J, on the b6 from Ydtd, on the f2, on the b7, on the f1 equals queen. J promotes first. Then Ydtd promotes. Queen, oh, queen to c4 is a terrible blunder. Why? Because now this allows for the great move of queen b5 check. Oh no. Ydtd has checked the king with his queen, which would force J to take Ydtd's queen, and then Ydtd would take back with the pawn. Ydtd would then promote the pawn, and the game is basically over. Jayelawrence saw this, realized his folly, and it was in his position, move 64 in fact, that Jayelawrence waved the proverbial white flag and capitulated. Oh, man. Tough way to lose a great game, but Ydtd later was quoted saying, Jayelawrence can play. He has my respect. That's going to do it for tonight's podcast. I'm Ydtd 7 saying stay tuned, and I'll see you soon.